Hi Anatomy, I wanted to review the neuromuscular junction with you again because this is a very important juncture and it is, of course, on our next test. So, the neuromuscular junction, or the NMJ, the neuromuscular junction, hello. That is where the neurons, or the nervous system, come into contact with the muscles. And remember, specifically what we're talking about is the skeletal muscles, so the ones that are under voluntary control. And we know they're under voluntary control because they're connected to neurons that we can control with our brain. So it's not something like heartbeat that you can't control your heartbeat just by thinking about it. You can think about something else. Let's see if I get this light right. You can think about something else and then that might speed up your heart rate, but you can't just think, I'm going to speed up my heart rate now and make it go faster. That's a different thing entirely. But you can think, I'm going to pick up that cupcake and reach out and pick up a cupcake. So that is a difference in the skeletal versus smooth muscles. So let's think about what are the players involved here. So the chemicals that are involved. So the chemicals, it's important to keep these in order. We have acetylcholine, which we can abbreviate as ACH. Okay, this is acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. And this is being released from the neurotransmitters onto the muscle. We then have calcium, which is an ion with a +2. Okay, so this is calcium. We then have, let's see, make sure I'm doing this right, acetylcholine that really makes calcium happen, which then makes troponin happen. We have troponin. We have tropomyosin. And we have actin. And we have actin, tropomyosin. We have myosin. And then we have ATP. So these are the chemicals we care about in the neuromuscular junction. So let's think about what's happening in this, okay? So we have a neuron coming down, and it's going to do what's called synapse on the end of on the surface of a muscle, okay? And so within the muscle, so if that's our neuron, and here's the surface of a muscle, what happens is the neuron releases acetylcholine. So acetylcholine gets released from that neuron, and what acetylcholine is saying, so this is ACH, it's saying, hey muscle, do a thing! And it's telling the muscle it's time to be active, or it's time, it's telling the muscle to contract, okay? The whole point of acetylcholine is it is the neurotransmitter that tells the muscle to contract. So again, this is a neuron. This is the muscle, the surface of a muscle fiber. And remember that the muscle fiber is the cellular level of the muscle. And so within one muscle fiber, this is basically one cell. And we'll have a nucleus over here. It doesn't really do much in this case. We'll have sarcoplasmic reticula, which are it's this like stuff that's kind of hanging out on top, which is really important. We'll just do a little bit of it, so that we're going to call this the SR, or the sarcoplasmic reticula. Reticulum, if you're saying just one. We have mitochondria, which are around. Mitochondria. And remember, mitochondria are the powerhouses that provide ATP, so that's going to be really important. So what does ACTH do? Okay, so step one in creating a muscle contraction is the release of ACTH onto the muscle fiber, okay? What that does is then kind of wakes up the muscle fiber. What it does is it causes a shift in the entire muscle fiber so that it becomes, so if you just kind of imagine this whole thing is a fiber, the cover of it becomes kind of awake. It becomes charged, and that causes calcium to be released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so then the SR releases a whole bunch of calcium. So calcium floods the neuromuscular junction, or the muscle itself, okay? So that's where our second chemical comes in. So ACTH causes the muscle to start releasing calcium. So that's awesome. But then what happens? So then we have to imagine that within this muscle, we have all these things called sarcomeres. So we have all these repeating units that look kind of like this, where we have all of these kind of going this way. Boop, and they pair up. And then we have these intersections that kind of look like this. Okay? Oh, I'd messed that up. Here we go. And then this one looks like that. All right. And so, if we get a little closer, okay, if we look at this, we have, these are actin fibers. Actin? Yeah, so this is actin. There's a whole bunch of actin fibers going down this way, and on this side, actin. And then this is myosin. Okay, so myosin is in the middle. And so we're going to take kind of a closer look at what's happening. Okay, so if I take this area and I zoom in, okay, so we know right now that there's a whole bunch of actin, there's a whole bunch of calcium acting here. So we have a myosin fiber, and it has all these ball-looking ends, okay? They kind of look like this. They kind of alternate. They have these clubs on them. And it's really important because they are cocked and they are ready to reach out and grab actin. And when they grab actin, they suddenly will go whoop and go that way on this side. And then on this side, when they grab actin, they will go whoop and pull this way. So in either case, they're pulling towards the center, which causes a contraction. And that's what we want in a muscle contraction. But the problem is, around actin, to make sure that nothing can come in and bind when it's not supposed to, we have tropomyosin. Okay, so this is tropomyosin. Tropomyosin. So it's basically tripping up myosin is how I like to think about it. Okay, and so that's all well and good. So what it's doing is it's binding the active sites of the actin so that myosin can't bind it, okay? And it's kind of got this little guy kind of hanging out with it, okay? And these are the troponins. And what troponin does is as soon as calcium comes in, it binds to troponin. And when calcium binds to troponin, troponin causes this whole thing to shift. So troponin plus calcium exposes the active sites. Exposes the myosin binding sites, which is, so on actin you have these binding sites that myosin can then bind to. So let's say that happened over here. We have, which one am I doing? So here is troponin bound to calcium, and it's caused the whole thing to kind of shift so that suddenly this myosin can bind to that actin and then contract the whole thing. So that's your series of events, okay? The only way to get myosin to let go is to have, I need another color, is to have some ATP in here to then cause it to let go and then recock, okay? So ATP is required to reset the myosin, okay? Otherwise, myosin's just going to stay stuck to well, it's not going to stay stuck. The presence of ATP will cause myosin to reset, and it's calcium being present that allows those active sites to be present. So if you don't have enough calcium, suddenly your active sites are all going to be gone, but myosin still really wants to connect, so you start to get a cramp. Okay, well, that's part of how cramping works. Okay, if you want to make this whole thing stop, so you have a contraction, you're done contracting, you grab that cupcake, now you want to put the wrapper down, whatever, you have to go, you start it up here, and then you turn everything off. So if I turn off the neural signal, so I tell the neuron, stop doing the thing, it's going to stop releasing ACTH. As soon as ACTH is gone, the calcium gets sucked back up by the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So just that organelle in the cell just takes it back up, because it's no longer this skin, or I'm trying to think of it like skin, the membrane of the muscle fiber is no longer charged to tell it to release. And so if sarcoplasmic reticulum doesn't have to release calcium, it's not going to release calcium. So it's not being watched anymore by the acetylcholine activated cell. So it starts taking its calcium back. Okay, if you don't have calcium, then the troponin is going to bind back to the tropomyosin in a way that then blocks up the actin, so myosin can't bind to it anymore. If myosin can't bind to it anymore, it doesn't matter if it's reset or not, if it's cocked or not, it can't bind actin, actin's going to go ahead and spread back out, and your muscle relaxes. Okay, so those are the action steps in order to cause a muscle contraction, and then also the order of steps that have to be turned off in order to have the muscle relax again. I hope this helped. Hint, hint, you will have a question on the test where you're going to be asked to give the order of the chemicals in this reaction, or in this process, and so do make sure you understand these things. Have a good night. Bye.